立法會主席。
President. Members will please remain standing while the Chief Executive enters the chamber. Chief Executive. Please keep quiet, members. Will members please observe the rules of procedure in the course of the proceedings? Other than the time you get the floor to speak, please keep quiet. The Chief Executive will address the Council. Chief Executive. President, honourable members, fellow citizens, I am glad to come here again within a fortnight's time to address this Council at this Q&A session for some exchanges. I must stress that the SAR government treasures the relationship between the executive and the legislature. Myself and my administration will, through various means and channels, maintain communication with honourable members. I'm convinced that honourable members and administration are pulling in the same direction, i.e. we want better and more rapid development for Hong Kong. There are many opportunities and challenges lying ahead of us. The administration and LegCo should work collaboratively to take forward policies with a sensible and pragmatic attitude. Lying ahead of us are three major livelihood issues, one social issue and a constitutional issue. Livelihood issues are housing, poverty, and aging society. The key social issue is environmental protection. The constitutional issue is the election arrangements for the chief executive election in 2017 and LegCo election in 2016. The community is very concerned about these and views are diverse. They call for the full cooperation of the administration, LegCo, and the whole community in the spirit of mutual understanding and accommodation. The members of the public are anxious to see the administration act pragmatically. Over the past 4 months, the new administration has launched a whole raft of initiatives, including including the old age living allowance announced on July the 16th, and the subsequent series of short to medium-term measures to address the long-standing housing problems and to enhance the work incentive transport subsidy scheme. Many cannot be implemented without the support of the Council. That underlines the importance of the executive and legislature cooperation. For the issues that are complicated, involving revamp of the systems, we have to deliberate together and listen extensively. For others, we have to seize the opportunities and act decisively. We have achieved timely effects in relation to the Hong Kong Property for Hong Kong People policy, as espoused in my manifesto, the administrative measures to curb mainland pregnant women with no ties to Hong Kong, and the halting of visits by non-Shenzhen residents with multiple entry visas. Hong Kong is a tiny place with a large population. In this crowded place, many of the resources cannot be massively increased in the short term, and sometimes we have to have measures that are preferential for Hong Kong people. The buyer's stamp duty launched last week is a case in point. On the housing front, I realize that members of the public expect the administration to address the housing and ownership problems as soon as possible. The administration has reiterated that it will speed up land and housing supply while implementing demand-side management to ensure stable development. In terms of supply, the administration will identify new sites and optimize the existing sites available for housing development, including urban renewal, rezoning, increasing development density, and conversion of industrial buildings. In terms of demand-side management, the Financial Secretary rolled out a package of 2 initiatives to accord priority to Hong Kong permanent residents at a time when the market is exuberant and the supply is tight. At the same time, we further combat short-term speculative activities to address the supply and demand problems. The administration will monitor the market closely and undertake timely measures to maintain healthy and stable development of the market. In terms of long-term planning, the Steering Committee on Long-Term Housing Strategy will conduct an in-depth and comprehensive analysis and study of the demand for different types of public and private housing going forward. As regards poverty alleviation and elderly care, it is generally acknowledged that we should give priority to the needy, not least the senior citizens who are in desperate financial straits. The OALA recently presented to the Council represents a significant policy. The OALA is a lasting poverty alleviation measure. We do need to maintain the requirement of income and asset declaration so that our resources can bring maximum benefits to senior citizens who are most in need. Let me cite you some statistics. Assuming that there is no income and asset ceilings for OALA recipients over the age of 70, the annual expenditure will increase from $6.2 billion to $10 billion. And with an aging population, the expenditure will increase year on year. At the same time, the working population will start to decline by 2020. The financial burden on the younger generation will become ever greater. The Eurozone debt crisis has sounded a warning to us. When contemplating new expenditure, the administration has to be cautious. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong. Mr. Leung, it's not time for you to speak. Mr. Leung, please be seated. It's not time for you to speak. Please be seated. Mr. Leung, if you do not observe the rules of procedure again, I will have to send you out of the chamber. Chief Executive, the Eurozone debt crisis has sounded a warning to us. When contemplating new expenditure, the administration has to be cautious, having regard to the long-term implications, lest we store up an unbearable burden for the future. While we look at the financial capability, we have to understand that OALA is not the only means of poverty alleviation. In fact, we're going to re-establish the Commission on Poverty with a view to formulating policies that meet the needs of poverty alleviation. We'll be putting in place a poverty line to enable us to address the poverty problem with objective and quantifiable standards and coming up with measures to improve livelihood steadily. In terms of environmental protection, we will strike a balance between development and environment. We will improve air quality, and we will be guided by the public health in terms of air pollution policy. To tackle poverty, housing, aging population, and environmental problems, we have to have economic and financial capabilities. Otherwise, our words will remain hollow. Therefore, we are going to set up the Economic Development Commission. We'll look at the land, capital, taxation, and human resources and come up with a comprehensive economic policy and industrial policy. We will also set up the Financial Development Council to take forward the development of the financial sector and underpin our position as an international financial center. As regards the electoral arrangements for 2016 and 2017, the administration will activate the constitutional procedures at an appropriate time and mount extensive consultation. Finally, I must let members know that the consultation work for the policy address and the budget commenced last week, and after listening to various views, I will further elaborate on our work in my policy address in January. Thank you. The Chief Executive will now answer questions put by members. Members who wish to ask questions, please press the Request to Speak button to indicate their wish, and then wait for their turn. Members will please stand up when asking questions. After the Chief Executive has answered the questions put by a member, the member may forthwith ask a short supplementary question on his or her question. Please do not make any speeches so that we can fit in as many members as possible. As per usual practice, I will allow members from different political persuasions to take the turn to put questions. And the time is very close for members to put in a question. Mr. Lo Wai Kwok. Thank you, President. Chief Executive, myself and the engineering sector, I feel that the government should seek changes while maintaining stability, and we have to act proactively. We are concerned about whether the infrastructural development will be sustainable. Now, for the past 15 years since the reunification, the jobs fluctuate a great deal. Sometimes we are inundated with work, and sometimes we are deprived of work. Now, if we have a long-term horizon, like 20, 30 years of infrastructural planning, we will create job opportunities and business opportunities, and the younger generation will be given more opportunities to get ahead. And Mr. Chief Executive, you said in your manifesto that you would look at the mechanism, and there will be cross-disciplined staff to look at town planning and so on. What progress have you achieved, and will there be any sustainable and long-term infrastructural developments that will be included in the day-to-day agenda? If not, why not, and what is your plan going forward? Chief Executive. Thanks very much, Mr. Lo Wai Kwok. Myself and my team are very concerned about the long-term land and infrastructural development in Hong Kong. The quality of infrastructural development is well-renowned. The engineering and the construction sectors are really praiseworthy in this regard. I'm sure that under the long-term planning in Hong Kong, the engineering and construction sectors in Hong Kong will have a good future. In the past, there were times for various reasons the SAR government would like to launch the developments with even pace, but that wasn't achieved. So going forward, I will be talking with the engineering and the construction sectors more, so that all these infrastructural developments will be proceeding according to schedule, so that there will not be any fluctuation in the quantities of work that were experienced in the engineering sector, as alluded to by Mr. Lo. We have already started the work. We are looking at the long-term land and infrastructural needs in the days to come. And I hope that Mr. Lo and his sector would continue to be concerned about this. Mr. Lo, my supplementary question is this. To put in place long-term infrastructural development, we have to have good enough consultation. In the light of the ever-changing political situation in Hong Kong, will the Chief Executive improve the consultation mechanism? Chief Executive, we will review the consultation mechanism in our day-to-day or outside the day-to-day mechanism for consultation. I do have informal and non-regular meetings with the sector. I talked with the Construction Association not so long ago and talked about this sector and also the problems of concern to them, i.e. the supply of construction workers. We did have constructive dialogues. Mr. Leung Chi-Chiao. Mr. Chief Executive, you kept emphasizing that housing represents an important part of your agenda. Now, the problems with housing lie with land supply. The previous administration had some targets. Each year there would be 20,000 or land for 20,000 private housing flats. Chief Executive, you anticipated that in the coming 3 to 4 years, there will be 65,000 units to be coming on stream, and on average it would be less than 20,000 per year. Now, in terms of public housing, the waiting list has a size of 200,000. Each year, the target was to build 15,000 units per year. It seems that 15,000 units would not be quite sufficient to meet the demand. So I wish to put this to the chief executive. In order to boost the housing supply and to shorten the waiting time, will the chief executive increase the annual amount of land supply and also the target of public rental housing production? If so, what concrete measures do you have? If not, why not?
After the past 2 to 3 years of wide consultation and in-depth discussion, there has been a consensus with regard to future land supply. Future land supply is not only a necessary element in terms of the supply of housing, it's also an important element for economic development. Whether we are talking about hospital beds, homes for the elderly, or hostels for university students, the high commercial rent undermining our competitiveness, undermining our economic development, all these problems boil down to the supply of land. It's not that Hong Kong doesn't have land. What we need is a long-term and comprehensive planning so that whether it's for shops, for commercial building or residential buildings, there is enough land. Mr. Leung Chi-Cheung's question is very important, not only to our community, but also to young people as well, and we need to involve young people in the discussion. Now, young people that are now studying in the universities, by the time they have children, if you look at our map, then what should be the shoreline outside the Victoria Harbour? By then, what about our new towns, our urban area, our villages? What will be their relationship? Now, 40% of our land belongs to country parks. And we need to conserve our rural area. We need to make good use of urban land. As for long-term planning, we need to discuss it more widely. In the past 2 to 3 months, we have already started the first round of thinking and preliminary planning work. In appropriate juncture, we will come to this council and consult you and the community at large, and we want to engage everybody. It is not a single person's task. It's not only the government's task. It's about our future generations, the quality of their life. The quality of their lives and also their competitiveness. Mr. Leung Chi-Cheung, Mr. Chief Executive, with regard to land resumption policy at present, the policy was decided decades ago in the development of NT Northeast. The land resumption policy adopted by the administration cannot keep up with the times. And because of long time consultation, a lot of changes. Please be brief, Mr. Leung. I would like to hear from the CE concerning the land resumption policy. Can there be any improvement? The Chief Executive. We're happy to listen to advice. On the whole, the administration's resumption policy, I think Mr. Leung is more concerned about compensation. Everything will be reasonable and sympathetic. Mr. Wong Kok-heng. Mr. Chief Executive, with regard to the launching of the OALA, your subordinate is not doing it well enough. It's really disappointing. I know you know that, but I don't want to belabor the point here. Mr. Chief Executive, in your platform, On page 11, concerning standard legislation for standard working hours, you gave an undertaking to the FTU. When you took office, you would start the legislative process for standard working hours. And you said that you would set up a task force to study the matter. Now, at the beginning of this year, the last term of the government started collecting information through the LWB. Information had been submitted to the Executive Council. Now, I therefore want to ask the Chief Executive, Mr. C.Y. Leung, the timetable and roadmap for the legislation for standard working hours, and when will a task force be formed? Mr. President, I'd like to thank Mr. Wong for the question. In my platform, I gave the undertaking that I will set up a task force, and the membership would include government officials, the academia, employers, employees. The task force will follow up the study on standard working hours. By the end of November, a report will be given to the LAB, and then in December, we will come to the labor manpower panel to report. Mr. Wong Kok-heng, the CE has not answered me when the task force will be formed, not when the report will be given to the LAB. He has not answered my question. It will be within that time period. Mr. KK Fong. Thank you, Mr. President. The CE took office on the 1st of July. There have been many incidents, nationalist education, anti-novice development, OALA, so on and so forth. He is standing at the opposite end with the general public, and people don't have trust in you. Now is a chance for you to recover. The Minimum Wage Commission has given you a recommendation. Minimum wage should be $30. Now, when you were a member of the Executive Council, you commented a lot on minimum wage, and I would like to quote you to this effect. Now, you said that the purpose of minimum wage was to deal with low income poverty or employment poverty. Now, you challenge the business sector, ask them to give data for. You said that the data given by the business sector were not adequate, and they should convince you with data. Can you still remember these words? Now they propose $30. Will you change the $30 to $33? The Chief Executive. Mr. President, I thank Mr. KK Fong for the question. With regard to the issue of poverty, and in particular employment poverty, or the working poor, minimum wage is one of the means of dealing with working poverty. And that has been my long-standing view. When I receive the report, I will listen to the advice of the Executive Council, and the Executive Council will make a decision in line with those targets which were quoted by Mr. Fong. If I may ask a supplementary, in the discussion of the Minimum Wage Commission, the business sector said they should keep the status quo of $28, and the labor groups asked for $33. And if it is objective, why should it be $28? Why should it be $30? Or why should it be $33? The Commission is not able to convince us that the decision is made on objective data. Now the CE says that he will defer it to the Executive Council. Will he be going against his own promise and his own principle? And that is, you need data to be convinced, because minimum wage is to help with working poor. The CE. With regard to working poverty and minimum wage, I have not changed my position, and after receiving a report, we will set a reasonable number. Mr. Chung Kwok-ban. Mr. Chief Executive, in your election campaign, You said that you would support the transformation of local manufacturers, develop the mainland market in particular in clocks and watches, textile, garment, toys industries, which are traditional industries, and help them to transform and upgrade. How will you do that? The Chief Executive, with regard to the enterprises, SMEs in particular, and the industries, their upgrading and transformation are my main concern. Now, since I took office, I've talked to various chambers of commerce and trade associations. I talked to them in Hong Kong and also talked to those who have a business in the mainland. And I also last week went to the TDC and listened to the report of the TDC on how they help SMEs, Hong Kong SMEs, developing their business in the mainland. About a month later, I will go to Guangzhou and attend a dinner party, to be honest, which will house about 1,000 entrepreneurs who are doing entrepreneurs who are doing business in the mainland, and listen to their views. I'm concerned about their business conditions. Different Hong Kong enterprises have their branches in different parts of the world, but they encounter different difficulties. But we will act appropriately. We will be proactive appropriately and support Hong Kong enterprises in their development. Mr. Chung, now the CE says that he will consult, he will listen. But do you have any concrete plan? Say, for example, for the fashion industry, if possible, I hope you will establish a fashion development committee. We can advise the administration on how to go about it instead of just consultation. In the past few months, we've heard a lot of views, and we are studying them. And the views include how we can build up a Hong Kong brand. We are also considering this, and that is in the mainland. How can we help Hong Kong brand and Hong Kong products to have a permanent exhibition venue? These are the views we've heard, and we are considering them seriously. Mr. Fernando Cheung. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chief Executive. An advanced and civilized society, retirement protection is a right, not a welfare measure. With our present-day economic capability, we should be able to give elderly people a decent living. Our prosperity today is the result of the contribution of our previous generations. Today, with our economic capability, 1/3 of the elderly people are living in poverty. The image of elderly people collecting cardboards is a blemish for Hong Kong. It is indeed shameful. We hope that all elderly people, when they retire, will be given a basic livelihood protection. Your OALA is not adequate for helping the poor. It's just 2,200. And it is not showing respect to the elderly because you ask for declaration of income and assets. In your minds, Mr. Chief Executive, do you have a plan? It is, as an advanced society, we don't have any retirement protection. It's really an exception. Do you have a clear timetable, a roadmap, a direction so that Hong Kong can establish a civilized and advanced system so that all elderly people can enjoy their twilight years? The Chief Executive. Thank you, Mr. President. I thank Mr. Cheung for his question. Mr. Cheung knows that in the past years, I have been paying attention to Hong Kong's poverty problem, including the retirement protection for elderly people. In my platform, I said this. I hope that in my government, I will work with the community at large so that elderly people can be supported, can be housed, and should be given enough financial support. With regard to retirement protection, I have several ideas. First, the OALA, as mentioned by Mr. Cheung, and also looking into the improvement of the MPFS, and also study the aging population and public finance, and make suitable financial provisions. With our economic development, with our level of economic development, which is very high, because of our long-term issue of distribution of incomes, if we can care for the low-income people, in particular the elderly, and give them a stable livelihood, we need a stable financial plan. It's not that because we have a high level of economic development, the government will certainly have such financial capability, or the elderly people with the financial capability, so that they can have a better life. We need to be responsible. What we have promised elderly people, we can deliver year after year, day after day. In terms of financial arrangement, that is a tall order.
Mr. Fernando Cheung, thank you very much, Mr. Chief Executive, for outlining this broad future. Now, in fact, the CPU over the past 10 years has conducted a lot of studies over the past decade. So, Mr. Chief Executive, will you be more specific about any plan in which all the elderly people will be able to enjoy a decent retirement? Chief Executive. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, if you carry on making noises in your seat, I will have no choice but to invite you out of the chamber. Chief Executive. President, as Mr. Fernando Cheung said just a moment ago, we will continue to study the sustainability of the retirement protection scheme. Sustainability is the key word. The CPU conducted about household survey covering about 10,000 households. We will be able to have the findings by the end of the year. We are prepared to present all these findings to the members of the public with a view to mapping out a good retirement scheme. Now, on my table are the studies and conducted by the civic society. We'd like to put our heads together in this regard. Mr. Dennis Kwok, President, Mr. Chief Executive, on page 52, you said that you would maintain the core values of Hong Kong people, human rights, democracy, and freedoms. Now, the problems with the rule of law are the resources for the judiciary, the manpower, the listing period is getting ever longer, and the legal aid is too narrowly based. Many people are unrepresented litigants. Now, when Justice Bukhari said that our judiciary system will face an unprecedented storm. Now, you keep talking about being pragmatic. In terms of maintaining rule of law, what pragmatic thing are you going to do? Chief Executive, at one of the ceremonies this morning, I had the opportunity to say to the judges and the judiciary that for the judges to maintain the independence of the judiciary and the contribution that they have made, I had the opportunity to express my gratitude. I attach a great deal of importance to the contributions made by the judiciary in Hong Kong. I know for a fact that a lot of the judges are working under tremendous workload. In terms of appointment and the workload of the judicial officers, if there is anything that the executive can assist, then we will not shy away from the opportunity. I attach a great deal of importance to the independent judiciary system and the rule of law. This is a very important asset for Hong Kong. Mr. Dennis Kwok. Miss Elsie Leung said something that challenged the judiciary. Why didn't you come out in public and say something in defense of Hong Kong? Now, if you are attaching so much importance to the judiciary, why don't you devote more resources to the judiciary so that they can discharge their function that much more effectively? Chief Executive, now anybody who is concerned about Hong Kong will be entitled to their views. I will not be commenting on these words. Mr. Michael Tin. Mr. Chief Executive, I haven't written up my question, but I just say this anyway. When Hong Kong people go to Singapore, India for travel, they will have to use body language to express ourselves because they don't understand our English. We go to Japan and South Korea, we have to use body language because we don't understand their English. But now the world has changed. According to an international survey of the 54 places where English is not spoken as a native tongue, Hong Kong ranked 25th. In Asia, we rank 7th. We have been overtaken by Japan and South Korea. Mr. Chief Executive, we must be aware that after 1997, the linguistic environment has changed. English is disappearing. And there are fewer and fewer classes that are conducted in English. And English doesn't really matter in Hong Kong. It would undermine our competitive edge going forward. Now, when you came to New People Party in March, you also recognized the importance of English being upgraded. Now, in terms of enhancing Hong Kong's English standard, what specific measures have you put in place? Say, for instance, will you require the Executive Council meetings to be conducted in English or in English every fortnight or what? In Hong Kong, we don't really have the English linguistic environment. How can you make Hong Kong an international city? Chief Executive. Well, in the Executive Council meetings and in the government meetings, the spoken words or the written documents, we have a lot of times in which we use English. Basically, the English standard of government officials has not declined. But in Hong Kong, we do need to enhance the bilingualism and triliteracy. Hong Kong is a platform between with links with outside world. We do need to have really good language level. Before I was elected, I was sitting on the councils of universities, and I've done some of the work there, like encouraging the secondary school teachers that we do need to have a good spoken English for the teachers before they can teach their students. We would encourage and support teachers to have immersion in English-speaking countries. So that's then it would build the English proficiency. I go along with Mr. Michael Tin. If Mr. Tin and other honourable members have any good ideas, we are all ears. Mr. Michael Tin. I offer you a challenge, Mr. Chief Executive. In your tenure, will you be able to enhance Hong Kong's English proficiency and overtake Japan and South Korea? In Singapore, India, Malaysia, can we make sure that we rank at number 4? And that would be a benevolent policy that you're going to be leaving us with. Mr. Michael Tin, are you done with your question? Please sit down. This is a challenge. This is a challenge for the Chief Executive. Please be seated. Well, yes, we can certainly look at the feasibility and the criteria. Now, you talked about Japan and South Korea. Why do we fall behind these two countries? We can look at this and see how we can make it better. Well, the council meetings here are open to the public. There were suggestions by the previous chief executive that our meetings be conducted in English, but I didn't take him up on his offer. Mr. Raymond Chan, Mr. Chen, will you remove the placard? I can't quite see you there. Mr. Chan, please. President, the chief executive said repeatedly that to improve, he has to improve the relationship between the executive and the legislature. We have just started here in LegCo. We haven't warmed up our seats here. The Hong Kong SAR government is having a showdown with LegCo and the senior citizens. There are 3 no's: no withdrawal, no removal of the declaration requirement, and no increasing in the asset limit. You take it or leave it. In a couple of weeks, in a week or so's time, we are forced to endorse the proposal. Now, it's been taken to the Welfare Services Panel, the FC, and if we say no to this, then it will be an all-lose situation. LegCo, the government, and the senior citizens will all lose. We haven't seen such a strained relationship between the executive and the legislature. How on earth can you improve our relationship? What is most bizarre is that you are really holding us to ransom by mentioning the well-being of the 400,000 senior citizens. Mrs. Carrie Lam and other secretaries said that there was only 1 month retrospective effect regarding OALA. Now the question is, with this 1 month retrospective effect, that the former Secretary for Civil Service, Mr. Joseph Wong, said that for the government structure review, there was previous cases of retrospectivity. I think it's a question of you not wanting to do it. It's not a question of not being able to do it. Are you unaware of the previous precedents, or are you not willing to do it? Let me put this to you, Chief Executive, on behalf of the senior citizens. Is it the case that the Chief Secretary cannot have the final say, and you have the final say? Will you tell us, please, if we endorse the funding by the middle of this month or end of this month, will they be able to get the pay or the money for October? Mr. Chief Executive, well, the month that the funding proposal is endorsed will be the month that the money will be dispersed. Now, what you said is not a precedent. The OALA, I mean, this kind of expenditure doesn't have any retrospective effect. My team has made it very clear to the whole of Hong Kong. We're not really hurrying LegCo along in this regard, but the fact remains that we do need a couple of months from the point the Finance Committee endorsed the funding to activate all the relevant preparatory work, and the time frame has been telescoped already, including the 5 days of Lunar New Year holidays that they will be given up for our colleagues to carry on working through this period, so that we can roll out the scheme in March, so that the senior citizens will get their hands on the money. So our request is that if LegCo can endorse the funding proposal sooner rather than later, then we can get on with our work, and the senior citizens will be able to get their hands on the much-needed cash without any more worries. This is the whole intention, the whole request that we'd like to put in. And we'd like to get on with our work. We are being pragmatic. We are being sensible. We don't really have any intention of disrespecting or bringing any pressure to bear on the legislature. Mr. Chen, well, you denied that these were not presidents, assuming that there is no president, will you be acting out of the ordinary? Will you require all the tens of thousands of senior citizens to kneel before you for this to happen, or will you have to ask the liaison office? Well, the OALA and the amount was written in my manifesto. I have given the undertaking to the senior citizens in Hong Kong who are in need. I would like to see this happen, but I hope Mr. Chen and other members would realize that this is a large sum of expenditure, so we have to be cautious. We have to act in accordance with the established financial fiscal discipline. I don't really want to start any precedent. Just yesterday, some LegCo members said openly that if this precedent is created, then it would be rather dangerous. I subscribe to this idea. So I'd like to put in a request to Mr. Chen and LegCo members that the Finance Committee endorses the government funding proposal as soon as possible. And the officials will make sure that the senior citizens will get the money as soon as possible.
Two members, leave immediately. Leave right away. Albert Chan, Ms. Albert Chan, you leave right away.
立即離開，陳偉業議員立即離開。立即離開會議廳。
You must leave the venue immediately.
謝偉銓議員。
Mr. Che Wai-chun. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chief Executive, on many occasions you stressed that to deal with the housing problem is one of the most important elements in the governance of this term. And you have to, you will make sure that there is continuous supply of land. Recently, you encounter problems in the supply of land, and that may affect your timetable. And apart from working on the supply side, you also do something on demand management. And you've introduced a certain policy. Now, in your thinking, and also in your platform, have you ever considered that the average income of a family, or have you ever considered what is the average income of a family and what is the proportion to be put on housing? According to some data, that is about, on average, 50%. Is it the number expected by your team, or you want it to be a smaller number so that the citizens of Hong Kong do not need to put too big a proportion of their income on housing so as to enhance the quality of living? The Chief Executive. I thank Mr. Tung Yi-che for his question. Mr. President, quality of housing is a critical component in overall standard of living. Poor standard of housing will mean a poor standard of living or poor quality of living. With regard to housing, this is a very important part of our governance or policy. I myself, the policy secretaries and heads of bureaus and other government officials have spent many weeks on how to deal with our housing problem in the short term, medium term, and long term. I don't have a number with regard to how much should be spent on rent or how much to be spent on paying a mortgage. But in my political platform with regard to housing, we assist the low-income earners to be housed. We help the middle income to own their own homes. Therefore, we reinstated the construction of HOS. This is one important element of helping the middle-income families to own their own homes, and that will also help to foster a healthy development in the housing market. When my administration introduced housing policy, the housing policy is working towards that direction. Now, in the past 3 or 4 months, when one measure is ready, we will launch that measure. You may not have the overall picture, but I can tell you, because we attach importance to the housing issue in the past 3 to 4 months, we introduce short-term, medium-term, and long-term measures to deal with the housing issue. And according to statistics, whether it is the sale of uncompleted flats by the property developers or application for permission to start construction, such numbers have been reported in the media, and the numbers are rising. In the coming 4 to 5 years, we can see about 65,000 units completed in the private market. These measures will increase the supply of housing units in the private market. Now, if they are sold to Hong Kong buyers, and taking into account the BSD, there will be more units which in the past are not targeting Hong Kong residents will be sold to Hong Kong residents. This is a small step towards the long-term solution. Mr. Tony Chair, Mr. Chief Executive, we all know that property prices are out of reach of the affordability of the ordinary citizens. And I believe you don't want a big drop in property prices affecting more than 1 million property owners. In terms of subsidizing home ownership, will there be any adjustment to the policy? In the past, subsidy was given to the low-income earners, but now even for professionals, for middle-income earners, they are not able to buy their own homes. Will you give some support to them? The Chief Executive. Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chair. With regard to the difficulty of the middle-income earners in terms of buying their own homes, I'm fully aware of their difficulties. Now, property prices are high. Mr. Chair is right in pointing that out. And many middle-income families find owning a home not affordable. Property prices are high because interest rate is very low. And when interest rate rises, then the middle-income families will have difficulties in financing their mortgages. In the past 3 to 4 months, we have been working very hard to launch small, short-term, medium, and long-term measures to bring relief to the problem. In assisting the middle-income earners to own their own homes, there can be many measures, but we need to get to the crux of the matter. We need to have adequate land supply. On this point, if I may take your time, and I urge the community to work together to shorten the time for developing public sector and private sector housing. We should shorten the development time for our new towns, in particular in NT Northeast. I've talked to citizens and local leaders. They say they don't want to see a piece of government land into a public housing block. They have different reactions. I want to plead, give to the public. We need to be mutually accommodating and understanding in order to solve our housing problem. And we need to have public housing to deal with the problems arising from old buildings, and such old buildings are causing safety and hygiene problems. We 7 million people are one family. We should be accommodating and we should have mutual understanding. We need more supply in the short term, in the long term, and in the long term in the private housing and public housing sector. Mr. Gary Fan, I want to ask a question on the problem of stopping the expectant mainland mothers with no ties to Hong Kong giving birth in Hong Kong. Now, this CS said that she had to spend about 3 months on, or rather, the SJ said that he had to spend 3 months in solving the problem. The former SJ, Ms. Elsie Leung, criticized the legal profession of Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, every day, there are expectant mainland mothers crossing the border to give birth to the children in Hong Kong. Now, the two legal professional bodies said that the interpretation of the interpretation of basic law will undermine judicial independence. And Justice Bukhari said that this is a ferocious storm. Now, the rule of law and independent judiciary are the core values of Hong Kong. Now, after 3 months, Mr. Chief Executive, do you have any specific proposals to deal with the problem of expectant mothers who have mainland mothers who have no ties to Hong Kong, and how can you do away with that ferocious storm? Now, the SJ and has been working very hard on this issue and also other issues under his purview. We will report to you in due course on how we eradicate the problem by administrative and legislative means. And let me also respond to the points made by the member. About 1 or 2 years ago, when I proposed to adopt administrative means to stop expectant mainland mothers with no ties to Hong Kong to give birth in Hong Kong, some said that it would not be possible. We will not be able to stop expectant mothers from the mainland entering Hong Kong because our border crossings were very busy. I would like to thank the private hospitals for their assistance. When we cut the quota to 0 for 2013, we got their support. And we also got the support of our civil servants working at the border crossings. With regard to expectant mainland mothers who have no ties in Hong Kong giving birth here, in fact, the problem is now under control. And the number of crossing the border in September, every day, those appearing before the A&E Department of Public Hospitals, less than one per day, about 20 or so in a month, mainland expectant mothers knocking on the doors of our A&E Department of the hospitals. This shows that even if people question our proposals, I think the questioning is healthy, but you have to have confidence in the SARG and confidence in our civil servants. Something you thought which would not be possible could be done, and with good effects. Now, Mr. CE, why can't you take this opportunity to tell members of the public that you defend the rule of law in Hong Kong and you defend the interests of Hong Kong, and after a long time thinking together with the SVJ, you will amend the basic law to deal with the source of to deal with the root of the problem concerning expectant mainland mothers with no ties to Hong Kong giving birth to their children, and do away with the right of vote of those children born here? The CE. Now, the rule of law is one of the core values of Hong Kong. Judicial independence is also our core value. I've said that many times before. I've said it many times before, and I repeat it here. I defend the judicial independence of Hong Kong and also the rule of law of Hong Kong. And under these principles, we will find a legal solution to deal with this problem in the long term. I defend the interests of people of Hong Kong. This is my obligation as the CE of the SARG. I am the only candidate who proposed the Hong Kong property for Hong Kong residents policy. When I raised that, some people objected to that, but I implemented after I took office step by step. I'm implementing it. And we put in the lease conditions that the land units can only be sold to Hong Kong residents. And we imposed the BSD, which was announced by the FS last week, as for the mainland expectant mothers giving birth to Hong Kong and also multiple entry visas. We took into account the calls of the people and the wishes of the people, and we called it to a halt. We will uphold the interests of people of Hong Kong, and we will serve the people of Hong Kong.
Mr. Kenneth Leung, Chief Executive, on the question of the market, you said that the positive non-intervention policy was vague, and the government has to be appropriately proactive. Does it mean from this that Hong Kong is moving towards some semi-planned economy? And also in your January policy address, will you be rewriting this paragraph about the relationship between the government and the market? The reason I say this is because during the election period, I did mail to you the speech delivered by Sir Philip Haddingcave in 1982. It said,
to mean necessarily the absence of interventionism.
One of the three circumstances the government has to intervene.
Infections in market lead to the emergence of monopoly situations.
Second,
the market needs to be monitored in the general public interest, the classic example being the financial market.
Third,
in situations where the unrestrained pursuit of individual interests have undesirable macroeconomic or macro-monetary consequences.
Mr. Leung, put your question, please. President, 15 more seconds, if I may. As you, Mr. Chief Executive, said the buyer's stamp duty is one of the measures. Why do we deny this positive non-intervention policy? Chief Executive. Well, in my speech delivered on the 17th of October, I talked about the relationship between the government and the market. I talked about the positive non-intervention policy being vague, and I cite a couple of examples to illustrate this point and to illustrate its contradictory nature. I think that this policy is outdated, given the internal development and also the opportunities and difficulties arising from the external environment, the government has to be appropriately proactive. In my previous speeches and also in the policies that have been launched, I have fully demonstrated the policy of being appropriately proactive. Now, some members mentioned how we should assist the development of Hong Kong enterprises and so on. Mr. Kenneth Leung, Mr. Chief Executive, you said a moment ago that an economic development council would be set up. Some members urged you to set up a government development council. Will you be setting up an accountancy development council? What is the purpose of having all these different committees? Chief Executive, the Economic Development Council would set great store by the development of the professional services. About a decade or so ago, together with some professional groups, we urged to set up a coalition of professionals that includes the accountancy profession, and there is promising future for this profession. And I hope that through this Economic Development Council, through the representatives on the council, they will make representation with the government. I'm sure that through the cooperation between the government and the different sectors, the professionals would see good development prospects. Mr. Poon Siu Ping, President, thank you. Mr. Chief Executive, I am glad that last week the administration rolled out the buyer's stamp duty to address an overheated market, to stop mainlanders speculating in property in Hong Kong. Ms. Li Fengying of FLU made this point before. When we put forward this idea, the market was soaring to the detriment of the general public. The previous administration kept saying that there are two markets. One is the luxury end of the market for the well-off and for the rich people. The other market is the mass market for the general public. And therefore, we proposed that for non-Hong Kong residents to buy in the mass market, there should be extra stamp duty to curb the problem. Now, this proposal is across the board, from the well-off and also from the general public. Will the Chief Executive please explain why or what is the rationale behind this across-the-board arrangement? Chief Executive. Some buyers or some capital is flowing into Hong Kong, into the property market. Some would purchase the luxury properties. We've seen soaring prices there. Sometimes they purchase the medium-sized residential units. As according to reports, some money flows into shops, commercial premises, and car parks. We don't really want to make any distinction in the buyer's stamp duty between the luxury end of the market and other markets. Mr. Poon Siu Ping, Chief Executive, to address the exuberance of the market, the buyer's stamp duty is one way. Will you be considering the capital gains tax for transactional properties in order further curbing the speculation? Chief Executive, we don't have this plan for the time being, but we do not rule out any possibilities or any proposals as long as we are able to make sure that the property market will be developing in a healthy manner, as long as we can achieve this particular target. But we have to bear in mind that Hong Kong has been pursuing a simple, predictable tax regime. The capital gains tax would be rather complicated. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong. President, Mr. Leung, well, you don't drink the wine served on you, you're drinking the wine forced upon you. Well, he's eating, he doesn't eat lo mei, and he's eating char siu. Please mind your language. Well, I've read this manifesto myself, in the whole manifesto, you are making sure that the elderly people will have a decent life. You never mentioned anything about a universal retirement protection, nothing. For you to implement your manifesto, you talked about sincerity. I mean, I don't think you're going to do it. Mr. Matthew Jones is worried about his job. We asked him why $2,200, why the rush? He said that he has to implement the manifesto. You never said anything like that. This is something I am concerned. I've highlighted all these paragraphs. I think you're deceiving the senior citizens. You're not going to do it. And you said, you talked about the special fruit money and the OALA, and the senior citizens are expecting this, and you talked about a means test. And they have to be subject to random checking in 2013. And you're deceiving the elderly population. Your question, please. Well, President, no government will be able to stand without any credibility. Now, I asked him before. Now, he said that because of the court case, he doesn't want to answer any questions about his illegal structures. Franklin Lam. Mr. Leung, well, I think you have covered a wide variety of subjects. I'm putting this to him under the Basic Law, Article 47. Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, the chief executive has to have integrity, has to discharge his duty faithfully. Now, Franklin Lam has made so much money, and there is an integrity problem. Now, in your administration, with so many problems, how soon are you going to be doing soul searching, and how soon are you going to come clean with all these illegal structure problems? Well, I think you have been speaking for more than 2 minutes. Please be seated. Chief Executive. Right, President, let me say something about the universal retirement protection and OALA. Mr. Leung, sit down, please. You've talked so much, and now is the time for the Chief Executive to respond. Well, I am concerned about the credibility of his administration. Chief Executive. President, about the unauthorized structures in my premises. I will talk about this when the judicial process is completed. Now, Mr. Franklin Lam, he didn't know the measures on special stamp duty. Now, there were some questions as to whether the Chief Executive would have consulted Mr. Lam on these measures. I can tell you categorically that the answer is no. The Financial Secretary has also spoken on this publicly, and there were Executive Council members who are legal members who confirmed that there was no way Mr. Franklin Lam would be privy to this policy before. Let me come back to the universal retirement protection. Mr. Leung, Mrs. Carrie Lam did say something like this when Mak Chai Kwong got into trouble. Now you are defending Franklin Lam. Do you think Franklin Lam should resign from EXCO and be subject to the ICAC probe? What's the point of putting any faith in him, like you said? President, I was too agitated. Please sit down, Mr. Leung. Chief Executive, well, the OALA is not the starting point of universal retirement protection. Well, Chairman, I think you have to uphold justice. If you interrupt the Chief Executive again, I will have to invite you out of the chamber. If you put your questions, please sit down and let the Chief Executive address your question. President, there are many forms of retirement protection. The universal retirement protection is only one of them. the universal, even for universal retirement protection, there are so many different types. The academics, in the civic society, there are so many articles, so many write-ups about them. In answer to one of the honourable members' questions, I said that I would be listening to different views to find out how we can maintain this sustainability. Now, this is very important. Now, given the capability of the government, we will consider how best we can take forward the retirement protection. Mr. Leung, I've been waiting all this time, and he doesn't answer the question about credibility. The credibility hasn't been clarified. All these four problems, there are four problems. Mr. Leung, I'm not sitting down. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, you have to leave the chamber.
梁國議員立即離開。
You have to leave the chamber.
梁國議員立即離開。
Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, leave the chamber. You have to leave the chamber straight away. And Chief Executive will answer members' questions. Mr. Wong Ting-kwang.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chief Executive, starting from today, the MPF accounts will enjoy the semi-portable scheme. Now, in the past, people complained that management fees were high, investment returns were low, and management fees are eating into the value of the MPF accounts. And the wage earners hope that they can be protected. Now, according to the chairman of the MPF board, Ms. Anna Wu, they will not consider putting a cap on the fees of MPF schemes. I want to know how determined the administration is going to implement the reforms, and how soon will the administration consult us?
Thank
you for the question. With regard to retirement protection, my political platform proposed to comprehensively enhance the management of MPFs, and this is one direction. And this is also one of the ways to more comprehensively care for the those who have retired. But this is no easy task. And different people have different capability of making contributions to the MPF. And therefore, we will look into the problem. I'm happy to work with employers, employees, and the community at large on how we can do it. But I believe there is room for improvement, and it's rather great. Mr. Wong Ting-kwang. Now, yesterday afternoon, I met with my schoolmates. Or rather, I met with some students. They asked whether the administration could have different types of arrangements. Say, you just like making a deposit in the banks, but the interest will be higher than a bank deposit, and without charging any management fee, that will be another choice, and that will help to solve the problem arising from the MPF schemes. Now, concerning the suggestion of the students, I don't know what does the CE think about it. Now, concerning making smaller deposits and then withdrawing a big sum at last. That is an idea which we may consider. Now, in my policy address, when I mention retirement protection, this is one of the directions we can explore. And that is that may be a kind of annuity. And I hope that Mr. Wong and his friends can give us more advice on that. Ms. Alina Wong. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chief Executive, in mass rallies, some people hoist the British Hong Kong flag, and they were alleged of trying to make Hong Kong independent. And we have, but those mass rallies have no intention to make Hong Kong independent. But have you tried to understand why some Hong Kong citizens still hoisted British Hong Kong flag and reminiscence of the rule of the British rule? Is it because they are not satisfied with the governance by your team, or they are not satisfied with the governance of the mainland CPG, or are they worried about the undermining of core values of Hong Kong? Now, the CE, you have your obligation to reflect the opinions of the people of Hong Kong to the CPG. Do you understand Hong Kong people's worries and dissatisfactions towards further integration with the mainland? Have you ever talked to the CPG, and what did you tell them? Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Ms. Wong. With regard to Hong Kong's integration, economic and social integration with the mainland, the positives and the negatives of such integration are my concerns, and therefore, after we've taken up the office, we want to expand the positive sides, and we try to bring alleviation to the negative sides. Therefore, in combating the parallel goods traders, in terms of reserving property units for Hong Kong buyers, we have the measures of BSD and policy for Hong Kong property for Hong Kong residents, and also stopping multiple visa entries. We take the initiative to propose to the mainland and authorities, and we get the agreement of the CPG and also the provincial governments of the mainland. We have 7 million residents, and they have different views towards the governance of Hong Kong, and they have different views towards many things. But there is absolutely no need to use the colonial flag to express their dissatisfaction. On the 1st of July 1997, Hong Kong reunited with China, and the SARG was set up according to the Basic Law and Joint Declaration under One Country, Two Systems, Hong Kong people ruling Hong Kong. This is a fact recognized by the people of Hong Kong and overseas governments. The design of the Hong Kong flag and Hong Kong emblem are enshrined in the Basic Law, and that is the Bohemia flag. But does the CE understand the worries of people of Hong Kong? You say you try to expand the positives and try to reduce the negatives, but you have not mentioned the negatives. Do you understand their worries? I just want to know whether he understands it or not. Mr. President, I mentioned many times before, and even in this council, because of the relationship of Hong Kong and the mainland is getting closer, and there are more and more exchanges. One of the concerns is that in Hong Kong there are certain resources which are there are certain scarce resources which cannot be and the supply cannot be increased in a short time, including milk powder and land. These are their concerns and worries, and we were well aware of that, and we also introduced measures to deal with that. Mr. Christopher Chung. Mr. President, Mr. CE, after reunification, Hong Kong's position as an international financial center has been rising. Whether in terms of raising capital, in terms of turnover, we have hit new highs. But with the prosperous financial markets, local brokers are facing difficulties. And some of the practitioners may have income lower than minimum wage. Now, the small investors rely. The small traders, small investors, usually deal with small brokers. This is the situation in Hong Kong. But some of the market participants and large banks adopt cutthroat competition and introduce zero commission. Traditional method of operating business of the small brokers cannot survive, and small investors will have little choice. While our financial markets are moving towards globalization, the administration should care for the survival of small brokers. And therefore, I want to ask the CE, will the administration and the relevant government, relevant bureaus change their policy of favoring big brokers? And will the administration attach importance to cutthroat competition in dealing with attach importance in dealing with cutthroat competition in the securities market? Will there be a floor on commission? Say, for example, to set it at 0.15 to 0.25%. And will the administration ask the stock exchange to review the effectiveness of extending trading hours and the impact of cutting lunch hour? And mainland commodities, foreign exchange, and security brokers are setting up their businesses in Hong Kong, but the little progress for Hong Kong brokers setting up business in the mainland. How can you assist our brokers in doing their business in the mainland and expand the mainland market, the Hong Kong market in the mainland? Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Chung. During my electioneering, and also after I took office, I've talked to the small and medium-sized brokers in Hong Kong. I know that the small and medium-sized brokers are facing difficulties. But this is a long-standing problem which cannot be overcome in the short term. I understand your difficulties. And let me tell Mr. Christopher Chung, I appreciate their contribution to the development of our securities market. Without them, we wouldn't have achieved so much today. Now they are facing tough competition, they are facing difficulties, but I can see there is room for development. We should we should seize the opportunity provided by reform and opening up of the mainland, and Hong Kong brokers should try to enhance their competitiveness so that they can increase their share of business in Hong Kong and also in the mainland, and not only relying on favorable government policies. I'm happy to talk with Mr. Chung on the future development of small and medium-sized brokers. Mr. Chung, with regard to the setting up of the FDC, we have high hopes. Mr. Chung, please do not give long speeches. I hope that the CE will honor his promise in his political manifesto and help the security brokers to expand their business. Now, the preparatory committee of the FDC has many meetings. I have seen a draft of its report. Very soon, we will announce the setting up of the FDC. It is a very good platform for our financial services sector, including the small brokers, to discuss with the administration on relevant policies. The CE, if you may answer one more question. Mr. Alan Leong. Mr. Chief Executive, Mr. Dennis Kwok, Mr. Dennis Kwok just recently asked you why you don't take the opportunity to rectify the adverse comment made by Ms. Elsie Leung against the legal profession and the judiciary. You say it is just freedom of expression. Now, if you say it's time for the peg exchange rate to be adjusted, and then tomorrow you say it is just a personal view. This is not my question, Mr. President. Then what's your question? Now, just now, a colleague has put a question to you. Within the period of 9 days, you press our welfare panel to hold a meeting of 10 hours, more than 10 hours, and you try to rush through the proposal with the Finance Committee. You don't compromise, you don't negotiate, you are just arrogant. This is not the first time. Concerning the reform of the government secretariat, the CE asked the then Legislative Council through the Zhang government to do the same thing. Mr. Chief Executive, your approach, your style, are you going to bring the kind of political struggle tactics of the Communist Party to Hong Kong? You are not going to talk to this council, and we can only succumb to your proposal, and that is the only way out.
Chief Executive, I think Mr. Leung has really taken it too far. I've already explained that the administration would merely like to get the funding approval from the Finance Committee sooner rather than later, so that the senior citizens would get their hands on the money as soon as possible. I said that my colleagues will be giving up on their Lunar New Year holidays. They will be working straight through. We're not forcing the hands of the electrical. We're merely saying that the OALA preparatory work will only start as soon as the electrical has given the approval. If electrical would like to have more time, we're prepared to talk. This morning, Mr. Matthew Cheung wrote to the chairman of the Finance Committee, Mr. Tommy Cheung, and we agreed that we're going to have another meeting scheduled for the 9th. If members are not done with the discussion, you want to come back on the 16th, we are prepared to do so. We're not forcing FC's hands. Now, if it is endorsed on the 16th, then the money will be payable a week later. This is simple workflow problem, not any other problems. Mr. Alan Leung. Now, within 9 days, we have to meet well over about 100 deputations. We have to discuss the OALA at the Finance Committee. Now, this is the pressure created by your administration, Mr. Chief Executive. It's not a pressure that we brought to bear on ourselves. Your question, please. I'm pleased to hear from the Chief Executive that he's not replicating this political struggle style in Hong Kong. He said that I'm really taking this too far. Now, Mr. Chief Executive, in Hong Kong, because of your style, the social fabric is being torn apart and the whole society is being polarized. Will you be coming back to this consensus politics in Hong Kong? Chief Executive. On the question of the OALA, the objective of the Hong Kong SAR government is very straightforward. It's very simple. We presented this package to the Finance Committee for scrutiny. We presented our arguments. On Friday, we had a meeting, and on Tuesday, we had another meeting, and then we should be able to make available the money to the senior citizens. If members would like to take more time, then the timing will have to be put back, and that's as simple as that. Right, the Chief Executive has answered questions from 18 members. I think we have to draw a line there. The Chief Executive will be leaving the chamber. Please stand up. And now adjourn the Council until 11 a.m. on Wednesday, 7th of November 2012.